there's no evidence that the belief you made up or was handed down to you is the truth, any more so than a belief that you construct now as an adult using free will and your choice for the future that you want to create. Like, there's no evidence for this old belief is the truth and this new one isn't. You get to decide what's true for you.
I'm Kandas Rodarte. This is Gratitude Geek. Welcome to our fourth and final episode of this year's October Breast Cancer Awareness Series. Today we are chatting with Merit Kahn about her breast cancer story, her one-woman show, Optimistic Personality Disorder, and how humor connects, inspires, and creates. Welcome, Merit.
Well, thank you, Kandas. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us your story.
Tell you my story. Well, happily, I wrote my story as a one-woman inspiring comedy show. So where should I start? I am an optimist, and I have been through challenging things like most people. And I learned to rewrite the parts of my story, my life story, that were giving me a limited opportunity in the future so that I could create new possibilities for myself. And that's kind of who I am in the world, as a person who wants to inspire others by being open and serving as an example and helping you laugh through the things that might have challenged you in your life.
One of my favorite quotes is something along the lines of, if you can't find the door, make one.
I
It's
love
Milton
that.
Milton Berle. That is as close to the quote as I'm going to get, but I just, that's what you did.
That is what I did. I will tell you, one of my favorite quotes is tragedy plus time equals comedy. But what I add to that is nobody said it had to take a long time.
Well, isn't time relative?
It is. And, there are certain tragedies that required just a little bit more time. Let's not be Pollyanna about it. But for the most part, there's a lot of things that we get ourselves wrapped around the axle about that really don't need that amount of time to be dramatic about it. And the moment we can let go and just find the humor is a good moment, because that really shifts everything that happens after that. So the whole purpose of my show is rewrite your past. Take the stories that don't serve you, rewrite your past, and reset and rewire your future.
Yeah. What about your breast cancer story? This is the fourth and final episode of our Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So tell us your breast cancer story.
Yeah. So my story is my dad's mom died of ovarian cancer at the age of 56. She was the oldest of 8 siblings. Her 2 other sisters both died of breast cancer. Of all the 8 siblings, there is breast cancer in every branch of that tree. Her brothers all had daughters that had, there was breast cancer riddled everywhere. So we knew there was some genetic aspect to this. At 40 years old, I had learned that one of my cousins took the BRCA test, the genetic test, through Myriad Labs. I'm a big proponent of them. And she tested positive, and my aunt called me, and I had never heard of it. I had never heard of genetic testing. I knew my grandmother died of ovarian cancer. I didn't know there was a link between that and breast cancer. I mean, there was just no reason for me to ever look into it. I was oblivious. I took the genetic test, and I tested positive for BRCA1. And, at 40 years old, I was like, okay, well, what are my options? And, I had everything from just, wait and see, to do preventative surgeries like a hysterectomy to avoid ovarian cancer and a double mastectomy to avoid breast cancer. And so, my perspective was, I'm never going to be as young or as healthy as I am right now. And the wait and see approach was like, wait until you get breast cancer, because my risk was 87%. At some point in my lifetime, I would get breast cancer, and my risk for ovarian cancer was 57%. And so for me, that didn't land like, will I or won't I? It landed very much like, I will. It's just a matter of time. And, I had to ask myself the very tough questions. What does that mean for me, my future? At that time, I had a 4-year-old, and I decided that the right path for me was to do preventative surgeries. I got rid of all the body parts that were trying to kill me because my theory was I could live with a few less parts. I just didn't want to miss out on living, you know? And I'm very grateful that there are genetic tests through Myriad Labs and others that give us that crystal ball to have a choice. There isn't a single person that I know, and I know many, many women who have dealt with breast cancer, and the ones that didn't have the crystal ball all wish they would have. Not necessarily that they would have made the same decision that I was able to, but that they had a choice. And so I look at that as I was given a real gift. I know for sure if my grandmother had that opportunity to have a choice, she would have done things that were available to do, but she didn't have that. And so that's my story. I'm constantly in awe of the breast cancer thrivers. I love the term. And I feel like I am, in a sense, one of them, like a cousin. But I really feel very strongly that women who have an opportunity to be given a crystal ball take that opportunity. It's that opportunity to choose whether you choose to monitor more closely and take whatever preventative measures you can to live the healthiest lifestyle you can. That is a choice as it is to be proactive in surgical routes, but without that information you don't get to choose. And I think that's a harder path.
Mm-hmm. So my sister was diagnosed in her early 40s, and I was diagnosed a few years later. So both of us in our mid 40s, we'll just say. And both of us were BRCA gene negative. We both took the test, and both of us were negative, and we had different kinds of cancer. So, however, from what
Oh,
I
no.
understand, my grandmother had a couple of aunts that had breast cancer. So that's 2 generations removed, you know. So, yeah, it's just really strange. But my daughter's gynecologist has informed her that when she hits about 35, she needs to start getting screened for breast cancer since there's a history in the family. I'm so glad that they're taking that preventative approach with her. Not that she's going to get breast cancer. They research. The thing I love about breast cancer awareness, for the most part, Pinktober really irritates me. What I loved has happened from it is that 44% of women who are diagnosed with breast cancer no longer die, right? The number of women who die has decreased by 44%, which that is all about the awareness campaigns. And a lot of that is women like you who get the BRCA test and are positive are taking preventative measures. You were giving me a choice to live it all over again, I would have had both of my breasts removed. I would just have had a double mastectomy and be done with it. But it would not have prevented my metastatic breast cancer diagnosis, though. I mean, I was still a year later. I was still told that it had moved to my lungs, so it's completely different. The double mastectomy wouldn't have fixed that. However, I wouldn't have the issue today where my breasts are two very different sizes, and it's impossible to buy a bra.
Mm. Yeah, the
I'd rather
challenges.
just be able to go braless.
That is a nice perk.
No perk. No perk. There's no perk when there's none.
Mhm.
Oh, in episode 294, Deb Davis talked about her procedure that she had done after her double mastectomy. It was called the Goldilocks procedure. It was just kind of this middle ground between artificial implants and flat. She showed me her profile after their interview, and they looked real to me. So, so
Cool.
I know. Okay, so let's talk about your one woman show. I love the name, Optimistic Personality Disorder.
Thank you. Well, the show, basically, I took my life story. I wrote it for my 50th birthday. And at that time, the show was called Book of Merit because it was my story.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be a one-time only thing. I rented a theater. I sold 170 tickets to friends and family and other people.
That is a phenomenal number of tickets to sell.
Yeah. I think it might have been a little, there probably were several people in the audience that were like, is this going to be like waiting for the baton twirler to drop the baton? Like, what is she doing? She wrote a what? At that point, I had done some stand-up comedy, and I originally thought I was going to do 50 minutes of stand-up comedy for my 50th birthday. That was the plan. A mic stand, a stool, and that was it. And as I was writing more comedy, I was infusing into it like some of the stories I do as a keynote speaker. So I'm constantly on stages, and I have lots of stories. They weren't all about my life, but it was, as I was writing the stand-up set, it became clear that this was more than just some stand-up jokes. That I wanted to show all the levels that my life has gone through. And I think there's something beautiful that happens in the comedy moments when you see that not everything was funny, right? Like there were drama. There was definitely drama, like any human experience. But the fact that I was able to look at those tragedy moments and find the funny and use the platform to help other people in the audience find the humor in their own lives, that's a beautiful experience. And so I quickly realized after the first performance that this was bigger than my story. Really, my story is not the whole point of it. The whole point of the show is that you leave the theater remembering the lessons in your life that made you strong and the laughter that kept you going, that you can see that when I can tell my stories about my mastectomy as stand-up jokes, like, huh, you can kind of look at your situation in that same way too. And I think that just completely changed my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love it.
So where'd the name come from?
The name came from when I was originally doing stand up, and I started my study in about 2014. At that point, I had been married for 14 years. By 2016, my comedy coach told me my marriage wasn't going to work. I don't
Your
know.
comedy coach told you your marriage wasn't going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Okay.
But P.S. I had been in therapy with my husband for 5 years, but my comedy coach, it took her only 2 years to tell me I had a bad marriage. So I fired the therapist and now I do stand up. That's kind of how life went. But yeah, here's how she figured it. Oh, yeah, that's true. But here's how she figured it out that my marriage wasn't going to work is because of my jokes. My jokes started when I started in comedy. One of the very first jokes I wrote was, "My husband is great and he thinks so too." And so it was like tongue in cheek. And he was in the audience when I did that joke. And then my jokes started to cross the line. And she said, "Now your jokes are going to make your audience feel uncomfortable for you."
Mm.
Because your jokes are basically, your husband's an asshole. And, I I realized that that was a victim mentality. That was just something, that takes two people and, all the things. I really had to take a hard look at, like, rein it in a little bit. It isn't therapy from the stage. It's light and find the funny in your
You're not
experience.
Mrs. Maisel.
No, but I have been called Denver's Mrs. Maisel, so I will just put that out there.
Well, some of her jokes crossed the line.
Yes,
You
yeah,
know, like I would have been really uncomfortable in that audience. It's
yes,
fine watching on TV, but
yeah, yeah, well, I definitely pulled back, and that's why you work with a director and other people that can kinda give you an outside perspective on, what serves your audience and what's a little too far. But, even in telling and I tell my story with the genetic test and, here's a true story that ended up in my show, but true story, I did not do nipple reconstruction. So when I had my double mastectomy, they at that time, they had told me, well, there's breast tissue in your nipples and there's nipple sparing procedures and there's not. And I was like, let me get this straight. I'm going to do a double mastectomy and you're going to leave a little bit of breast tissue in my nipples that could then cause me harm. That sounds like an awful way to die. Like, how'd she go? A little nipple. Like, no. Like, we're not going through all this and going down like that. Now, that was my personal choice. That is no commentary on what other women should choose for themselves. It's everybody's individual choice. I have no judgment around that. But for me, I was like, we're taking it all or taking nothing.
And there are other options. You could get them tattooed and stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But I was it was a hard thing. Like when, at that point I'm divorced, like after, so I didn't get divorced until many years after, 7 years after my surgeries. So I hadn't considered the impact of my surgeries on my dating life at some point in the future. Like, I was dating this one guy and I didn't know when to say, like, I don't have any nipples. Like, how do you say that on a
How do you say that on a date?
like, that's so weird,
I mean,
it's
do
like,
you wait until you know it's inevitable he's going to see them?
yeah, I
Do
don't
you give
know.
him advanced warning and give
Yeah,
him the
that
option to
was
leave?
confusing. It was confusing. And at first I was like, oh, I was making this big drama about, oh, I should tell you something. I've had some surgery. And then I was like, you know, this is in this day and age, like, you got to be specific about what surgeries you've had because people can make some assumptions.
Oh,
So, right?
didn't
Took
think
you a
about
minute.
that.
Yeah, took you a minute, Candace. But, I mean, you're making out with somebody and you're like, hey, I've had some surgery. Like, it's jarring. But I was messing around with this one guy, and this is another story I tell in my show. And I go, I should tell you something. And he goes, it's okay. I already know. And I'm like, what do you know? And he literally, like, grabs my boobs and he's like, is that the Mentor Memory Gel silicone implant? I kid you not, Candace. My mind was blown. Then he says, who was your surgeon? And I'm like, what did you just ask me? Like, did you just touch my boobs and ask me is this a particular specific
Was
implant?
he a pharmaceutical rep? What is his story?
He was a breast implant sales rep.
And you
Yeah,
didn't know that?
I did not know that.
That's hilarious.
So, which I guess tells you something about how my dating goes. Like, I didn't bother to ask him, what do you do for a living before he's in a position to touch my breast? So, I got some issues, but, but that was hilarious to me. And, and my joke is like, I had to stop dating him because he kept trying to sell me the latest upgrades. Um,
That's a good joke. That is
Thank you.
hilarious.
Thank you. Yeah. So I have a lot of hilarious jokes in my show, Candace. So if you ever get a chance to see it, you should see it. But it was funny to me, and that's a good example of, like, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it wasn't devastating and difficult and a dramatic year of surgeries and doctor's appointments and pain and expanders and all the drains and all the things.
No, the drains are the worst.
Oh
Gross.
my God, it was the worst.
So gross.
But at the end of the day, I got a few killer jokes out of it, and it makes a difference for people. I love perform. I've had many, many women in my audiences who have come up to me after shows, and I've performed in New York, Chicago, St. Louis, Charlotte, Rapid City, um, and there's always a woman that comes up after the show and says, I did something similar, or I have breast cancer and you made me laugh. And I just, like, it's such a gift. So, anything I can do to get the show in the hands of people that can relate to it in that way is just so beautiful.
You need a Netflix special.
Oh, that'd be great. If anyone listening knows how to do that, it'd be great. Actually, what I'd really love is I'd love a genetic testing company or somebody in that breast cancer, ovarian cancer,
Do you
world.
still have that guy's phone number?
I don't maybe. I don't know. That's a good
Because
point.
that's the perfect sponsor.
Huh. Like a
I mean,
plastic surgeon, like the actual implant?
yeah, the implant
That's
manufacturer.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. I thought about, like, a testing company because they're testing for other things too. So even if you didn't think you had, that particular thing in your history, my point is I'm a proponent of get as much information as you can. There's so many tests we have today that we did not have even a decade ago. And when you have information, you can be in control of your choices. When you don't have information, you are riding the wave of I don't know what's going to happen, and I just think it's such a gift.
Yeah, having choices is a huge gift, and there are a lot of them now. I mean, with the particular type of breast cancer I have, if it had been 30 years ago, I'd be dead. But luckily, Revlon sponsored the research into the drug that has saved millions of women's lives. Yeah, I mean, the pharmaceutical company was going to pull the funding, and Revlon stepped in and said, "We'll pay for it."
Oh, I love that. Makes me wanna go
Yeah.
buy nail polish.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, that's why I'm saying the company that makes the inserts, or even, I mean, you just don't know who to ask. But
Yeah.
I always think, who has the most money?
That is a good question to ask, because it is. I mean, it they would be the perfect sponsor, it's like because my show opens up conversations that people aren't gonna have otherwise. And, I think that's just it's a great opportunity. Anyway, I don't, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I am working all the angles because that's what I want for my life is to bring the show to more people. I've actually I wrap the show in now in what I call the work show experience. So it's not a workshop, it's not just an entertaining show, but it's a whole experience where you get to understand like let's like peek behind the curtain. How did I write it? How did I find these stories? How did I shift my perspective from tragedy to comedy? And what new possibilities opened as a result of that. And then you see the show, so you see the whole thing in action, and then we dive deeper into let's find a story and what are the beliefs that run your life. And some of those I call them hand me down beliefs. Sometimes we get handed a belief, and in fact I was listening to one of your previous episodes. I always do my prep work for to be a good guest, and you did a session with a guy on rewriting fear stories about fear stopping you. It's, Fletcher
Oh,
Ellingson.
yeah,
Is
Fletcher
episode
Ellington.
275. So, there you go. But I really it was a great episode, and when I teach about that, it's like, there's no evidence that the belief you made up or was handed down to you is the truth, any more so than a belief that you construct now as an adult using free will and your choice for the future that you want to create. Like, there's no evidence for this old belief is the truth and this new one isn't.
Mhm.
You get to decide what's true for you. Just like I had information about that gave me choices, you can look at all the beliefs that you have that have driven your life to this point and choose to keep them or to rewrite them. And that's what I feel like the show is a really important part of that, and for some people, the show is all they will experience with me, but other people see something more. They feel something in hearing my story, and they want that for themselves, and that's where my background as a trainer and coach, and I'm certified in emotional intelligence and positive psychology, so I'm not just an optimist comedian. I'm, like, literally certified in this stuff, and so to wrap the show in that learning component really gives people just more of a chance to make this a personal journey. And that's what I'm here to do.
I wanna talk about the business of comedy, 'cause you said you had a director, and that I didn't realize that comedians had directors.
Yes. So I look at my one woman show as a theater piece, not
Okay, so it's a
comedy.
director for the theater piece.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Having said that, I would say I don't know a single comedian, a high level professional comedian who doesn't have somebody that they work with, writing jokes, bantering back and forth, getting help with punchlines. The rule in comedy, as I learned it, is whoever comes up with the joke premise, they own the joke. And you can get punchlines from other variety of sources. So I've always been part of a writing group. I perform regularly around the country. I tour with a group called Moms Unhinged, and we're all mom comedians and all mostly mom audiences, a few token guys, and it's wonderful. And so we're always bouncing ideas back and forth within our comedy troupe. And yeah, so but in a theater piece, I mean, my show has a set and costume changes and props, and there's
It's a
blocking,
natural
and it,
play.
it is a
It's a one,
performance.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then you said own the joke. What does that mean?
Oh, well, when I said the person who has the premise for the joke owns the joke, is that okay? Oh, it's highly frowned upon to, and you've seen this in early episodes of Mrs. Maisel. I think it was in the first episode where her husband was doing material that he did not write. That is the worst sin you could commit in comedy. Do not steal anybody's joke, and really, there's some universal premises that we all kind of, you know that they're common. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? Like there's lots of men and women don't understand each other. That's not, nobody owns that premise. But if you tell a specific joke about that and I tell a specific joke about that, we can share the premise, but we own the punchline. So if I'm
Okay.
writing, like there was a really one of my favorite jokes, I'm talking about um I'm talking about my husband being a narcissist, and I rattled off, the premise of this joke, and then another comedian in the writing group was like, here's a great punchline, and I used it for a little while, and then I changed it, but the premise is mine, so the punchline is mine.
Okay. And it's just an honor between you're on your honor to make sure that you okay.
Yeah.
But what if you work on a joke together, but the way you deliver it is different?
If it's the words, you can't,
It's the words.
yeah, that's how I've always interpreted it. I would have an issue if I heard anybody else using my words, but, changing how they delivered it. It's still my joke.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There was a joke that I did. Sometimes you come upon it like accidentally. And I did a joke at Comedy Works in Denver, which is one of our big clubs here. And the joke was, well, I don't know how dirty we want to get, but it was just like, I, this guy asked me or said, like, tell me when you have an orgasm. So I texted him when I got home. It was just like, it's just like, right? It's funny. And so I do like, well, probably should know. He said he wanted to know. So I texted him. And I got off stage, and another fellow comedian, she said, that's not your joke. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's totally my joke. And she goes, nah, I think that's Rodney Dangerfield. And I'm like, that's weird. Okay. I'm not a Rodney Dangerfield fan, but I went back and I'm asking everybody, have you ever heard anything like this? Is there a famous comedian doing this? Did I hear it? And it's in my subconscious and I thought I wrote it. I couldn't find anything. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I stopped doing the joke because there was some possibility that I got the input somewhere, and I never ever want to be accused of stealing anyone's material. Like that would just be horrifying to me. That's why I think the best comedy comes from personal experiences, because when you look at your own life, there's plenty of comedy there, and those are my experiences. So you can't have that. My I have a gay dad and a Navy SEAL boyfriend. Like, there's plenty of comedy there, and that's just not a combination that a lot of people can talk about. That's
Do
mine.
they get along with each other?
Yeah, yeah. They see life completely different.
Funny. You are hilarious. All right. Again, I do love optimistic personality disorder. And I think I want to have that. I
You
want to
asked
have
me,
that.
and I didn't answer you about how I came up with a name. I think you asked me,
Yeah,
like,
that
where
was
did that
so
come
long
from?
ago. Yes,
So
please. How did you come up with that name?
I was writing in my journal as I was going through my frustrating divorce, and I actually wrote something like, the marriage was difficult, but I'm really hopeful that we can be amicable in this divorce process. And I feel really upbeat about this, and this is going to go really well. And I looked at the words that I wrote in my journal, and I'm like, why would I think that a challenging marriage of 17 years with a narcissist would end in an amicable divorce? Like, why do I think we're going to get along now when that didn't happen for all those years? And that was when I wrote, I'm like, I think I'm the one with the problem. He might have narcissistic personality disorder. I have optimistic personality disorder. And it just popped up on the page. And now I have a whole series of jokes about being optimistic, and it's good, and it's a little bit too much sometimes, but it definitely was a theme throughout my life. And for the most part, I would rather be more on the optimistic personality disorder side and dial it back a little bit with a little reality check than be a little overboard on reality check and have to dial up the optimism. But it can be done. Can be
I
done.
don't mind being optimistic.
No, it's a good way to
No.
live.
I mean, I understand that you were being really way over optimistic with your divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. Spoiler alert, didn't go well.
Didn't go well. I
No.
wonder why.
Yeah, didn't
But
go well.
but the optimism is not a bad thing. I consider myself an optimist. I mean, my whole outlook is based on gratitude. Gratitude and optimism go hand in hand. Okay,
Absolutely.
before it leaves my brain, I want to talk about predestiny
Okay.
because I remember learning about predestination in maybe middle school or something when in a sociology class, right? And I was educated in California. It's a very progressive
I was gonna
education.
say, I'm like, I don't remember having that class in New York.
We learned about religion and religious theories and things like that. And I remember thinking, I like this idea of predestination of it is what it is. But as I got older, I was like, oh, well, maybe. But then here's the mind-blowing moment. Prince Harry was destined to be one thing, and he chose something else for himself. And now
Mm.
he has 2 American kids, right? His kids could run for president of the United States. So he has completely changed the trajectory of his descendants for all eternity, right? And he made a choice. Now, was it the right choice? That's up to him. We don't get to choose for him. But that's not predestiny. That's making your own path, choosing your own way. And all of us have the ability to do that. If you can denounce your claim to the throne of England and have American children, he can do that. We can do anything, right? Now, granted, he has a level of privilege that many of us do not, but that is the most extreme example of somebody writing their own story. What are your thoughts?
I think there's many, many examples of people writing their own story. And I think that comes from the perspective that you choose, the beliefs that you choose to base your life on. I think it's a series of choices. Sometimes it is just that one singular choice, but it's a series of choices to where you place your focus and what you choose to input into your brain as options. I think there's a lot to be said for the podcasts people choose. Do you choose to listen to something that already reconfirms all the ideas you already know you believe in, or do you choose to be open to hear the perspective of the other side? Do you choose to things that are that feed your soul and make you feel gratitude and give you a perspective that supports what you're trying to create? Or do you choose materials that feed your brain with doubt and skepticism and all of those kinds of things? So, I think we're making little micro choices all day, every day. And all of those feed into the bigger choices that we make. Imagine if I chose to not know, to not test, to not do the genetic test. I wouldn't have opportunities to choose the path that I did because I was choosing stick my head in the sand. Maybe that's not a fair way to say it, but I'm choosing to, not know rather than know. I mean there's just lots, but I do think the power of choice is such a gift.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And your choice doesn't make you not optimistic. It makes you proactive. Optimism doesn't mean don't be proactive
correct.
because you were both at the same time.
Yes, and they actually so I'm not a breast cancer survivor or thriver, I'm a previvor. That's the term. And I kind of love that term. And for a while I was talking about it in keynotes. Mostly I was doing a lot of women's conferences at that time with that message. And but it was sort of like women in business, but the concept of being a previvor in all areas of your life. And what can you be proactive about? What do you need to be aware of and informed of that you can make choices in advance of difficult things that are coming your way? In fact, I was just as a 55-year-old woman, I'm already starting to kind of pay a little bit more attention to bone density. It's like, what little micro choices can I make now to make sure that I'm not going to suffer the very realistic fate of weakened bones? I already know I have some issues there. it's not a wait and see approach, and I can do bone density tests every 2 years like I'm supposed to, and I do, but I'm not gonna wait until the report is bad. I'm asking preventative questions, what do I need to do? Okay, weight bearing exercise. What do I need to do? Okay, calcium and vitamin D. And, it's like, so it's like be proactive,
Yeah.
be a previvor for all the things. It's not just health. It's not just one health issue. It's how can you previve in your relationships? Are things going well? Then that's the time that you want to take a course in better communications with your partner. Because,
Something that
yeah.
I don't want to leave the bone density thing because this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So let's talk about the bone density thing for if you have been on birth control pills for any extended amount of time, you need to be taking calcium, vitamin D, and K2 because that estrogen suppression is not good for your bones, right? And so there is a drug out there that I am given every 6 months, and I cannot remember the name of it right now, but there'll be a link in the show notes. It's for bone strengthening. And they have found that the breast cancer patients who are given this bone strengthener on a regular basis have a lower chance of having metastasis to the bones. And let me tell you, I have known women with breast cancer in their bones, and it is not it's very painful. And anything I can do to prevent that from happening to me, bring it on.
Yeah,
Bring it on.
I think that's such an important message. I
But
didn't know that. I don't know what the drug is. I'm interested to know.
what is it? It's a bone strengthener. What is it called? It'll come to me. I'll probably remember it like in 5 minutes.
Well, yeah. Maybe they should put something in there to, like, help your brain or something else.
Oh, yeah,
That's just all of us.
11 years of cancer treatment. I do my best. I do my
I
best.
hey, more power to you, sister. Like,
It's right there on the tip of my tongue.
I'm one of those people that walk into a room and doesn't remember why I walked in there, so no judgment here.
My favorite is when I go downstairs to refill my water bottle and I forgot my water bottle on my desk.
Or when
Oh,
your
oh,
glasses are on
mhm.
top of your
Yep.
head, that one,
When
yeah,
I'm walking around my glasses, where are my glasses? Or
yeah.
I put on a pair of glasses and then I'm like, what's this? Why am I having so much trouble putting my glasses on? It's because I have a pair of glasses on my head. Yeah. All of those things. All of
Yeah.
those things.
Good times, good
Good
times.
times, yes. All right. So we talked about the two things I want to talk about was the business of comedy and the idea of predestination, and we've covered a lot.
We
We
did.
have covered a lot. And I love this idea of previvor. I do not like the term survivor.
I'm with you on that.
I
I think that most of my friends, who have dealt with breast cancer and are getting clean reports definitely call themselves thriver.
yeah.
I love
And
that
I
term.
I use the term thriver to describe women, even if they haven't been metastatic. Because traditionally thriver is reserved for people with metastasis, but I think any woman who has come through the other side is a thriver,
I like that. It's just got a
you
good
know.
energy to it.
Survivor feels like you are a victim. I don't think cancer makes you a victim.
I totally agree with that. I think, it's your choice in how you language it. How you language it gives you the life experience that completely alters how it occurs for you. And we need to be very, very aware of deliberately choosing the language that we use to describe ourselves.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about how humor connects, inspires, and creates. Because that's the premise of your show, and I just love that that is your mission.
Thank you. Well, I firmly believe that laughter lightens the load you hold. So if you think about it, we are all holding a lot, right? There's stress. There's careers and families and relationships and children and health and there's just so much, right? There's just the world and all of the things, right? There's just a lot that we're holding. When things are heavy, it's hard to hold all of that. When you laugh, things just are lighter around you. And so if you think about it, if things are lighter, you can hold more. And it's just really hard to sit in a comedy club and where their job is literally to have you laughing every 7 to 10 seconds. That is literally the job of a
Is
comedian.
that it's 7 to 10 seconds? You can't go any longer than that?
You can if you're, so the rule is, or at least my perspective is the longer the setup, the better the punchline needs to be. It takes you a long time to get to the laugh. and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting for it, I better be, like, busting a gut laughing. But the little chuckles and there's things called tags, and it's like, here's the joke and the first punchline, and then the next little thing that keeps the laugh going, and then the third one is like, "Oh my god, did she really say that?" And so there's lots to it builds, but the whole point so yes, that is the joke of a comedian to have, like X number of laughs in a 20-minute set, and that's why the headliners are funnier than, the people setting them up oftentimes because they know here's how many laughs you got to get. So there is a science to stand up.
I really enjoy comedians that make me think, like Mark Maron and Josh Johnson. Is that his name? Josh Johnson?
I don't follow him.
They're both storytellers. And
Mm,
so you get engaged in their story. Then they hit you with
yeah.
the joke, but they've told a story, and that's like a couple minutes that they're telling you the story without the laugh. But you're like listening to the story. I mean, Mark Maron, his thing is that he comes back to the same punchline over and over again. He just keeps retelling the same punchline, but he does it in a way that's funny, not annoying, right? So I think there's just different styles, and
Yeah.
you find the style that works for you. I mean, I was never the guy that you mentioned earlier that your somebody told you that you stole the joke from him.
Mm.
What's his
Oh,
name?
Rodney Danger.
Yeah, I don't like his kind of
Yeah,
comedy. It doesn't. It's like, ugh, but so there's something for everybody, and you're
absolutely.
gonna find your. And this is true if as a business owner, it's true no matter what you as a singer, there is a audience for what you offer.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I love comedians that make me think. I like clever jokes. I like callbacks. Like, you told me a joke and then later in your set, you know, that
Yeah,
joke can
that's
be
Mark Maron. He
so
does the
funnier.
callbacks. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's very clever writing. My show has a lot of those moments. I tell you something in decade 1 of my life story, it comes back again in decade 3. I give you an example, something that you laugh at in the very beginning, it flows through the show, and I just think and a lot of that wasn't I didn't deliberately write it that way. It's just as the story evolved, as the comedy and the story continued, it was like, like, that's a perfect place for the callback, and so but I love when comedians do that, when storytellers do that, you know, when I'm watching a theater show, and it's like it's a beautiful circular construction, they call it, and I just love that.
All right, we have covered a lot. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you're dying to share?
I'm I'm just not shy about telling people I really would love you to see the show. It's just it's a fun night out. It's a great event, but it's great date night, and men love it as much as women do. And, young and old, it's relatable. So optimisticpersonalitydisorder.com is where or opdshow.com. And, you can find out about the tours. And as we're recording this now, I've got shows coming up in Minden and Manly, Nebraska, and Aurora, Colorado, and I'm building the show tour for 2026. So I'm always looking for, what are good theaters, somewhere around 200 seats is the sweet spot. Or fundraisers. What I really love is when my show can do good. So I, often am looking for like what fundraiser events can I partner with you, and let's raise money and perform the show and give people the experience of it. So I'm always looking for some creative ideas.
It sounds like you're doing a perimeter around the Denver area in terms of where your show is.
It makes it easy. I have traveled with the show, flying. So I've done New York and Chicago and Florida and Charlotte, and so that I get on a plane and with my set and
All
everything.
cultural centers, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I do find, it's a little easier. There's plenty of things within a driving distance of Denver that are, you know, great. And so, but I'll go anywhere. Anywhere there's a willing and open audience that, loves original theater. I mean, I'm so in awe because I am not a household name and no one's heard of my show. So when hundreds of people buy tickets, it's just like, oh my God, who are these people that are just trusting that from this woman they've never heard of on a show they've never heard of, they're going to give their time and their evening. It's humbling, and I'm so grateful. And I don't ever take that for granted. I am just so honored that I get to do what I love and people seem to love it. And what better could there be in life?
All right, Merit Kahn, this is your moment of gratitude. When you think about your life, optimism, pessimism, and all, can you think of a singular moment that you are most grateful for?
Whew, singular moment. I mean, the obvious one is the birth of my child moment. There's just is I've done some incredible things. I've had some amazing experiences in my life. I have traveled the world. I have met incredible people. I've run a business. I run a business. I'm doing what I love, but there's just nothing there's nothing that comes close to that moment of holding my son in my arms for the first time, and except maybe that first moment when he smiled at me, that first kid smile. So I am, of all the things I've done in my life, the the greatest stories on every page of my life story include my son Jake. Just full stop.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek. If you believe, like I do, that gratitude is a business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Solely. All of Merit Kahn's links are in the show notes. This is episode 295. I've been your host, Kandas Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy for sure.